This is Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Money Sense is brought to you by the Chamber Pension Plan. For further information, visit chamberpension.ky.
The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you. The Chamber Pension Plan is asking for all members to ensure their member details and contact information is correct and up to date. To review and update member details, simply visit chamberpension.ky. Log into your account and provide the necessary information for your personal profile and for your beneficiaries. For assistance in updating member details, call us at 745-7630 or email admin@pensions.ky. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you.
From Radio Cayman Studio, this is
Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community.
A very good morning and warm welcome to Money Sense. I'm Simon Caudry, your host, and I'm delighted to be joined by a couple of guests this morning, both dialing in advance of the second annual B-Sides IT conference, which is going on the island in 2 weeks' time. Our first guest is Ira Winkler, who is the Executive Director of the Human Security Engineering Consortium, the former Chief Security Architect for Walmart, and someone who has helped companies identify weaknesses in their defences through friendly attacks. Ira, a very good morning to you and thank you for joining us.
Good morning to you, and I'm glad to be here. I should also say I'm also the Chief Information Security Officer for a company called Size Security, too, so they would be upset if I didn't get that in.
Okay, well, there you go. Well, Chief Information Security Officer and cyber attacking, all this to the layperson sounds a little bit terrifying, and it sounds as though there's lots of people out there wanting to do bad things to us. And then we read in the paper that everyone in the US government seems to be scared of TikTok. Everyone in the US government seems to be scared of the Chinese. What is the landscape out there, and how worried should we as ordinary people be?
So here's the thing. For the average person, you've got to worry about, like, too many people are out there selling you knights and dragons instead of selling you rats and exterminators. So what I mean by that is you do have nation states who do have to, for example, be afraid of nation state attackers. You do have power utilities that really, no offense, but I doubt taking down the power grid of the Cayman Islands is a high priority.
Well, the utility company does a successful job most weeks.
I mean,
that's a different story.
Well, that again, that's the rats, because everybody's saying, oh, Russia will do this, China will do that and everything. And those are dragons. Those are knights trying to create dragons to fight. The reality, though, is that you have rats, you have cockroaches, and the rats and cockroaches always are there. And you kind of need an exterminator because, just like you said, you have the power grid going down at random points in time, not because it's being attacked by a dragon, but because you have all these, like, in some cases, literally, you have rats chewing through cables that are taking down the power grid, the telecom systems, and everything else like that, where you're worried about these things that are, like, people are afraid of these mythical things, while you have the real things that are actually constantly there creating damage on a regular basis that aren't going to be a dragon setting everything on fire, but they're going to be little constant annoyances that you have throughout your, frankly, daily life. And that's the real problem.
So I'm thinking when you say that a lot of small, mid-size, and even large companies use some of the biggest companies in the world, use the AWSs, use the Microsoft to store their data. Should they be worried, though, that some of those nation states are trying to attack those companies and therefore their data or their ability to access their data could be compromised because of that?
Well, the good thing is that when you're looking at AWS and you're looking at, like all these cloud services, most of them are so diverse that it's really not going to impact the average person. So, for example, if you do have like a provider for the Grand Caymans, or you have Microsoft Office or whatever the case is running your business, the reality of the situation is that those are stored in instances around the world. Now, companies like Microsoft and Amazon are really, really good at protecting themselves. And even if there is potentially a major outage, the likelihood is so small that it's actually going to end up impacting you that it's really nothing you should try to worry about. I mean, I tell people like, yeah, some people are saying, well, I'll create my own server and do whatever. The reality is that you're not going to be able, in most cases, to secure your own servers as well as Microsoft does, as an example. And I'm not saying Microsoft alone, but Gmail, all these other providers are really pretty good at providing fundamental security. And at the end of the day, you have to stop and look at everything from a risk-based decision, which is really what people should be doing. You know, for example, yes, you can get in your car and drive to work and die in a car accident. The likelihood of that is fairly small, so that it is better for you to go to work. And much like, you know, trusting the internet, yes, you should trust the internet. Yes, TikTok and the stealing of privacy is kind of a little rat. TikTok does have that capability. And whether or not that's a concern for a person is one thing. For a nation state, it's much more of a serious concern that for governments, you know, if China is collecting information, that yes, governments do need to be concerned about that. The average person, not necessarily as much, unless you're going to grow up to be a spy spying on China.
What about the risk, though, for individuals when everyone seems to be anxious about their data being stolen or being used in nefarious ways? So what should the average individual do to prevent that? If they're using the Microsofts, the Gmail, if they're using those sorts of services, obviously those people are doing good things to help prevent those. But there's, rather like the internet, it's the last mile of copper where the faults lie. With the individual, it's sometimes the stupid things that we as human beings do. So what should we be thinking about trying to do to better improve our situations?
So at the end of the day, I hate to say, you know, it's common sense, but really you can't have common sense without common knowledge. And fundamentally, if you're concerned about your personal privacy, I'm much more concerned about social media than I am concerned about like Gmail being hacked, as an example. Because too many people give away way too much information about themselves, which allow nefarious people to potentially steal their information.
And just,
So
let me probe on that, because I've heard this said before, and I've not asked someone of your experience about it, but I've heard people say that the information that you put on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, people put too much, and you can use that really, or bad people can use that very easily to steal other information about you. How true is that statement?
That's very true. So for example, you know, sometimes people say, okay, like a generic question, at least in the United States and in many other places, you know, when you're doing a password reset, is what is your mother's maiden name? Now, if you have women, for example, on Facebook, you know, who go ahead and put their maiden name, like, you know, it's like, you know, like Sarah in parentheses Smith, you know, Johnson, you know, that woman is, her maiden name is Smith. Now, if you go ahead and you list that Sarah Smith Johnson as your mother, what is your mother's maiden name is pretty clear. So all of these social media things allow people to create a profile of you really, really quickly, depending on how well you protect it. So if somebody's going to do a password reset, what's your favorite sports team, for example, somebody could go ahead and figure that out really quickly if they see pictures of your favorite sports team or you posting about your favorite sports team all over your profiles. Then likewise, you know, there was one thing where it said, I can guess somebody's password, you know, with 80% accuracy based upon their work desk. And then you see, okay, what's their, you know, you see pictures of their family, you see a sports team, you see a variety of other things, their pets, and then people have their pet's name and so on. I mean, I had an ex-wife and they were able to reset her password based upon posting pictures of our dog, because what's your pet's name and so on, you know, things like that.
People don't give it enough thought then, do they?
No, it's sort of like I like to lie a lot. Like, there's a video going around. I think it's of Jimmy Kimmel or somebody sent somebody out on the streets of Los Angeles to go ahead and ask people, questions about what's their password and stuff like that. And you could see it. And that video keeps making its rounds on the internet of like, oh, so, what's your, I have a really good password. It's based on my birthday. It's like, really? How old are you? Oh, it's like this, it's like, what's your birthday? It's like, oh, here, happy birthday, that sort of stuff. And people are able, they just gave them the month and day. And then somebody asks, well, how old are you? And that's the year. And so you can figure things like that out. So anyway,
you're making people probably a little bit paranoid about what they are disclosing in social media. And there will be people who respond and say, don't worry about that. I've got all my stuff, all my passwords stored on one of these password providers. And everything's fine there because those are well encrypted and all the rest of it. But one of them was hacked recently. So are those the Holy Grail? Are those a solution?
Well, the answer is probably yes, because, again, it comes down to risk. Now, the reality of the circumstance, and you're talking about LastPass, Password Plus, whatever those things are called, and it's all about risk. One thing everybody could do, for example, is generally turn on multi-factor authentication. Yeah. And that's available on Twitter, that's available on Google, that's available, Microsoft accounts, Azure, things like that. You can implement multi-factor authentication. And yes, somebody could go ahead and violate it, but generally it's an exponential decrease in risk when you use something like this. And too many people are, you can't let the perfect, stop the good enough.
So what you're
and nothing is, and let me just say one thing that's critical. There's no such thing as perfect security, and the only people that will ever tell you there's perfect security are fools, liars, or a combination of both. And the reality is, what's good enough? What is good enough for you to think it's comfortable to walk out of your house and drive somewhere? At the same time, remember that a meteorite could theoretically come through your roof and kill you while you're in your house. These are all risks. The reality, though, is we have to just manage our risk and do things with reasonable security. Now, reasonable, again, is common sense, but, hopefully after hearing this interview, more people will have common knowledge to implement common sense a little bit better. But yes, password managers can be hacked, but it still makes it exponentially more difficult to hack an account and do that.
If I might, I don't want to put words in your mouth, and we've only got about 30 seconds left.
Oh, sorry.
But if I were to say, if I'm hearing you correctly, if someone isn't doing an audit of their social media accounts and seeing what they've put up there, and if someone isn't using two-factor authentication, then they might as well go around the streets with a sign on their head, actually written down the passwords and say, please hack me.
I'm not going to say it's that bad, but I would say those are simple things you could do. And if the internet's important to you, it's worth your time to go through your social media accounts, assume your worst enemy is going to be looking at that, and not having multi-factor authentication, kind of, come on, that's like cybersecurity 101. You're going to lock your car, this is locking your social media accounts. Spend a little extra time to do it.
Ira, on that ringing note of guidance or instruction, thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on Ireland at the conference in about 2 weeks' time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. We're going to take a short break now. Please join us again straight afterwards when we have our second interview.
The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. Become a member today. With 6 flexible life cycle funds, we help you plan for financial security in retirement. We keep our members informed with the plan's performance through quarterly fund fact sheets. We have an all-in expense ratio of 0.75%, over 16,000 members, and 337 million CI dollars in assets under management. If you would like to join or require further information, visit chamberpension.ky. And for information as it happens, follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Email admin@pensions.ky or call 745-7630. the Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. Become a member today. Money Sense, the only personal finance radio show in the Cayman Islands, hosted by Simon Caudry from the CFA Society Cayman Islands.
This is Money Sense.
Welcome back to Money Sense and our conversation on cybersecurity. We're joined in the second half of today's show by John Hammond. John, thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for letting me join you.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you with us. Now, your bio gives me a little bit of scare because you've done some work for the government and you've done some work in terms of making sure that malicious malware and hacking doesn't get into our lives. Is this something that we should be scared about? How scared should the average person be by malware, hackers, and such like?
Ooh, that's a super interesting question because honestly, hey, I'm going to have a boring sort of, I don't know, legal lawyer answer that says it depends. It totally depends on your own threat model, how you kind of measure your risk, where you weigh security versus privacy versus convenience, all those things. I'm a firm believer, though, that, hey, we still want to keep folks up and armed with basic security hygiene, whether that's simple, hey, strong password, two-factor authentication, the boring, basic boilerplate stuff, but it's definitely a necessity.
One of the things that I'm hearing about and reading about quite a lot recently is the enhancements that are going on through machine learning, through AI. Everyone's talking about Microsoft's new search engine. Everyone's talking about ChatGPT. That's an area which seems to me, and also people are talking about the use of artificial or computer technology to recreate people's voices, people's imagery. It seems to me as though there's a real risk there that people could be exposed by the development of computer systems, and therefore some of the tools that they use to protect themselves, whether it be callbacks from banks when banks say, did you mean to send this wire, they could actually be at risk. What's your view on that?
Ooh, well, hey, that is a can of worms, and there are tons of directions to run in on that one. But I'll start with sort of, hey, that threat of malware and cybercrime certainly rising with, hey, that advent of artificial intelligence and all. ChatGPT, I'm sure, is the hot buzzword, and folks are chatting about. I'll be the first to admit that, hey, as a security researcher, as someone who tries to be in the trenches as much as I can, I will say yes, it will enable and really encourage a lot of the script kiddie threat actors or sort of low tier adversaries that will just sort of cobble together random snippets of code and try to make this amalgamation of maybe offensive tooling and hacker frameworks. I got to admit, yes, that will maybe bring on a new rise of that small, unsophisticated stuff. And maybe that's a threat for, hey, small mid-market businesses or managed service providers or anyone sort of in that IT industry, or just mom and pop shops, or I don't know, grandma, grandpa on the computer here and there. I don't think it's going to be a revolution for, hey, the advanced persistent threats, the nation state actors that are doing really elite, sophisticated, sexy stuff that makes headlines. Nothing new or groundbreaking is truthfully going to come from a ChatGPT or an AI. And hey, honestly, I went to a recent conference when I was trying to chat about the Black Cat ransomware gang, or a ransomware actor also known as like Alpha V, and they're using these hot new languages, more mainstream programming code. And I tried to ask, hey, ChatGPT, would you be willing to create some software in the similar vein as what this ransomware group would do for malware and for threats? And it would try to spit something out, and it would give code and syntax, but it's always a little bit half-baked. It's never fully there. Whether you need a little bit more credential setup or something to get this hooked up into the cloud, or small things are missing, and it won't just work out of the gate. So you still need a little bit of know-how and smarts to be able to put this thing together. So sorry, forgive me, I'm rambling. I think that is sort of why maybe it'll get us halfway, but not all the way there, especially for cyber criminals.
Well, you say it may get us halfway, but this is halfway having only really the average person learned about artificial intelligence in the last 6-12 weeks or so. I mean, people have only really been properly discussing it in polite circles. I'm not talking about IT people and cybersecurity people. That's a whole different area. But in people who without experience in this area haven't really been discussing this until fairly recently. And you're saying that already it could get us halfway there. It seems to me that in a year's time, maybe it's actually able to write code and do stuff that can hack passwords for people or find passwords. So does that mean that our cybersecurity protocols that we currently adopt will need to drastically change in a fairly short order in order to respond to these sorts of things?
Another super good question. And truthfully, I think you hit it on the nose there. You are right. And hey, this happened fast. A couple weeks ago, hey, we were having fun laughing at the pictures that, I don't know, Dolly AI would be able to put together. But now we're just talking with this thing and having real conversations and asking it for help. And again, that's just a couple of weeks, maybe a month or so in. But yes, I think soon in the future, there's a real potential and possibility that, okay, we're going to have to board up the windows a little bit more here because that revolution may very well be coming, but I don't know. I have to add my asterisk and disclaimer. Not Nostradamus, don't have a crystal ball, can't see the future, but I think we should be ready for it the best that we can be.
You're researching this area in live time. What do you see out there on the horizon that scares you the most, that we should be more mindful of than we probably already are?
I think you started to sort of tug on the question there. Hey, what about when this gets to compromising your identity, whether that's your voice, whether that's how you look with a deep fake AI or any of those? I had a viewer, truthfully, hey, someone in the community, because from my YouTube channel, from other stuff that I do on the side, and he said, hey, John, look at this. I found this online service. I found this product and company that would be able to put together like a replicating voice of yours. Just as you mentioned, hey, maybe faking or masquerading a bank phone call or anything. And I thought, wow, this is wild. For one thing, because I think, I wonder if I could help optimize and, I don't know, automate some portions of doing what I do, between recording videos and being on shows, even similar to this. Hey, what if I could just give that to a machine and let them run the show?
How do we know you're a live human right now, then? That's the...
Fair enough.
No, but so that's the point, isn't it? Because we phone up our bank, or the bank phones us up often for callbacks, and we get callbacks from other organizations that treat security very seriously. I mean, if you were to go down the rabbit hole of potentially losing your Office 365 account, Microsoft would have to make a voice call to you to identify certain things that they know about you. But your voice is something that can be hacked and can be duplicated by bad actors.
Yeah. So they had sent me this link for 11 Labs Studios or something along those lines. And I tried to feed it a handful of my own talk tracks, whether it's a talk or presentation I gave, or whether it's videos that I produced. And I asked it, hey, here's a script, here's something to say. Can you please spit out what I want you to sound like and say when you sound like me? And it played back, and it had a little bit higher inflection, didn't have the right tone. It wasn't quite there to the point that I could recognize, hey, that's not me. And I played it for some friends and some family, and they were able to tell, hey, that's not you, John. Definitely, I can tell. But sure, maybe I can say, hey, I haven't drank the Kool-Aid yet, but someone else might, especially if they don't know who you are, especially have interacted with you before or heard your voice consistently. You just sound like another person. So maybe for over the phone quick transaction, one way or the other, that could still be something questionable without a doubt.
Let me go off on a slightly different tangent, if I may, because in the first half of today's show, we talked a little bit about nation states and China and TikTok. And something that was dawning on me as we were having that conversation is, if there are applications on our phones that have the ability to track what we're doing or to follow what we're saying or what we're typing, does that potentially compromise two-factor authentication devices that are also on the same phone? Because someone could potentially duplicate what's going on one phone into another device. Does that create itself a security threat?
Sometimes is probably the best answer in that regard. Whenever there's an application or software or programs, even on your phone or device or any other sort of thing that you use, there's the very strong hope that, hey, this thing is built with those access controls in place. With the principle of least privilege, it's not allowed into any other services or caches or backend databases that the application doesn't need. So those things to bypass two-factor authentication, you're wondering about how can some malicious code get into a session or a cookie or the "Hello, my name is" sticker that maybe you wear on your chest as you go visit a website. Other programs shouldn't be able to see those the best that they can, but ultimately it depends on the application itself, and ergo their application developers, those programmers, those engineers that built this. So truthfully, I think, hey, that's why we need to bring out that education. That's why we need to bring out the awareness and get folks in the know and so well informed about cybersecurity and all these concepts, because that's the best way we can improve and really move the needle, so we don't bring out those dangers, even unintentionally, to the world we live in.
One of the things you said there about the dangers that we don't bring out, it seems to me as though a lot of people take their phone security quite seriously. They have their fingerprint, they have their Face ID, they take their laptop and their computer their security seriously. But then we have integrated into our homes lots of home automation systems, whether it be lights, garage doors, and I keep on hearing, without much knowledge on my part, that those things are very weak links into your network, into your security. How true is that?
Ooh. We're going to have a very pessimistic and glass half empty conversation, I suppose.
Well, no, give us that in 30 seconds if you can, before we have to end our show.
Absolutely. No, well, yes, the Internet of Things and all those devices that we keep connecting to our home Wi-Fi, it is truthfully the Wild West. It needs and it calls upon a whole lot of security researchers, just people in the community, to do the analysis and do the digging, due diligence to make sure, is this thing secure and can we trust it? Because oftentimes it's just, hey, trapped out by maybe a spot or a vendor to make a quick buck. It's easy, and I know a lot of consumers will buy it, but we, part of the community, have to hold everyone accountable. And I think that's why we do great events and conferences and why we get together to improve the landscape, make it better.
There's no obvious way for a person like me to buy something which is an Internet of Things home device and have a little sticker on it and say this has been reviewed and this has been approved, rather like, you know, food and such like has been stamped. There's no trade or standardization in that sense, though, is there?
Not yet. And I hope there will be very, very soon. At the minimum, I really encourage folks, hey, kind of do your homework, go research, go ask, maybe go chat with their, see what they can do from the vendor under their presence they give online. And even if that means, hey, sending emails, making phone calls, if you want to go that extra length, I think it's absolutely important, and you should.
Well, John, thank you very much for giving me a little bit of a nervous push down to the path of improving my security protocols. Let me just hand over to James, because I know we have the B-Sides conference coming up in 2 weeks' time. James, give us the update of what that is and why we should be registering and how.
Well, firstly, thank you to John and Ira for coming on this morning. Anybody listening, if you haven't heard of John or Ira and you're in IT or security, please Google them. They're on our speakers' websites. They're amazing people and contribute a huge amount to the community. B-Sides is a non-profit community conference. We aim to basically spread the word about security, to build a community here in the Cayman Islands, to give people opportunities to learn, to meet people like John and Ira, and to share knowledge of what's going on. The website is bsides.ky. We still have tickets for sale, although not many left, I believe. So if you're in IT, please come along. We also have free tickets for job seekers, for anybody who's maybe looking to move into security. So check out our website, get in touch with us if you feel like you could take a free ticket. And we hope to see you in 2 weeks.
Well, James and John and Ira, for joining us on the show, thank you to all of you. I've been given the collywobbles by this today's conversation, so I'm definitely going to be
collywobbles.
Oh, indeed, it's got me shaking with nervous anticipation about what I've done wrong in my security protocols. But thank you very much. I'll be at the event in 2 weeks' time for sure, and no doubt scared even more by what people tell me. But no, in all seriousness, it's vital that we all learn more about this subject. Thank you very, very much to our listeners for tuning in. Do rejoin us in 2 weeks' time.
The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. Become a member today. With 6 flexible life cycle funds, we help you plan for financial security in retirement. We keep our members informed with the plan's performance through quarterly fund fact sheets. We have an all-in expense ratio of 0.75%, over 16,000 members, and 337 million CI dollars in assets under management. If you would like to join or require further information, visit chamberpension.ky. And for information as it happens, follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Email admin@pensions.ky or call 745-7630. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. Become a member today.
Money Sense is brought to you by the Chamber Pension Plan. For further information, visit chamberpension.ky.